morning. It works fine. First, good morning. Welcome to the second day. We will be spending this morning talking about space startups and the startup nation. All those who don't speak Hebrew, do you have your earphones? Because we will be switching from Hebrew to English and back throughout the morning. My name is Ofer Lapid. I'm the co-founder of SpaceNest, the first Israeli space incubator, and I'll be your host for the morning. First, let's define a little bit about new space. I have my clicker with me. Here you go. Thank you. So space is all over the place. Space is all around us. Here it is. Okay. We need space to know the weather. We can't look outside the window. We need the iPhone to tell us if it's going to rain tomorrow. We rely on space for accurate navigation. So you have Google, you have Waze, the Israeli startup, and a little bit in the middle, this thing that doesn't work for iPhones. We rely on space to save our lives. Look, this is a wrist beacon that you put on your hand, and when you touch the water, it starts transmitting rescue signals that are received by the Cosmos satellites, an Israeli innovation. We rely on space to give us communication, anywhere we are in the world, and so many satellite dishes, it's amazing. So all those space assets are government funded, including the biggest elephant, $150 billion of space asset. It's so cool to be out there, but it's so expensive. So about 2 decades ago, there was a new movement of making space more affordable, making space affordable to people, to entrepreneurs like us. It started with the idea that in order to be able to reach space, we can no longer use those government-owned launchers that are very expensive, and we have to make space affordable. So all those 4 billionaires, the richest people on the planet, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Paul Allen, and Richard Branson, approached the same problem of how to make space affordable by actually doing the same thing, taking the launcher and make it reusable. So if we take the first part of the launcher, the first stage, and bring it back for a second use, it'll be cheaper. 2 different approaches. The 2 guys on the left are using propulsive first stage, a missile, a rocket that lands back. The other 2 guys are using an airplane as the first stage. And the airplane comes back and can take another missile or launcher. But these are, you know, the high-tech approach. The engineering approach, of course, is this one. Mr. Alan Boyd, whose life achievement is to create this amazing space plane that takes off from Earth and goes all the way to orbit, goes back, refuels, and goes over again. He's been working on that for like 30 years, and it's still not done yet because it's a hard problem. So the current best solution is the one from SpaceX. As you can see, here it is, taking off, separating first stage. The second stage goes all the way to orbit, and the first stage goes back to the ground for reuse. So this solves the first problem, affordable access to space. The second problem, of course, is affordable spacecraft. So for that end, we have what is called the CubeSat. A CubeSat is not a solution for all problems, but nevertheless, it's a cheap way to get into access because you take a very small package of a very low-cost satellite, and if your problem fits in that size, you can get affordable launch. So as you can see, these guys will be speaking soon. Danny, close to the end, Yossi, and Dudi. So some of our speakers managed to use those cheaper, affordable satellites to promote their own business. And they will be talking about that later today. But New Space is very diverse. We have so many verticals. We can talk about existing verticals like spacecraft manufacture, launcher manufacture, but we can talk about exciting new things like microgravity, and we will be talking about that, all the way to energy from space. And there are so many actors. New Space is immense. So what we are doing today is to expose you to New Space, expose you to the opportunities in Israel, and invite you to think about your own startup. Last slide for my part, and I'll be your host for the morning, is a staggering economical summary. So the space age owned by governments started with the Apollo landing on the moon in '69, and then we mark 2009 as the beginning of the entrepreneurial space age with the first successful launch of SpaceX. Now take a look at the money. This is, let me see over here, this is the amount of non-governmental equity investment, meaning personal, private money that goes into space. And take a look at this curve. This is not investment in Israel, unfortunately. This is a worldwide investment in space, but it's immense. And the curve is going higher and higher. So far, 303 companies received private funding in space only in the US, and take a look at the rest. So the missing part is the Israeli part. We have about 3 companies that have received venture capital funding, but soon enough there will be way more because you will all be starting in space. So we have quite a few guests with us today. I will introduce our first guest, Agnieszka Lukaszczyk, which shows that you don't have to be an engineer to succeed in space. She's a policy girl. We met way back when I was at the Space University in 2008, and she was the executive director of the Space Generation Advisory Council. Since then, she achieved 2 master's degrees, and now she's pursuing her PhD. She worked at the Copernicus policy for the EU, and now she works at the coolest startup for remote sensing, Planet Labs, as the EU policy vice president. Agnieszka, please come.